What's up guys, KPlays here, and welcome to part 2 of my Iceborne hunting horn set guides. This time we're going to be going over the strongest status horns. Now the choices here are a little less cut and dry than the raw damage picks. Depending on your priorities, you might want a hard hitting weapon with some extra status utility on the side, or something that'll pump out as much status as possible. For that reason, I'll be sharing options for both. Before we get into that though, there's one correction I need to make on the set from the last video. I made a small slip up when adding decorations to the Rasping Ballad set and forgot to put in an elementalist jewel. You'll want to use this setup instead so you'll have space to add in non-elemental boost. If you're going for straight high damage, you'll never want to skip out on that. There's only one scenario where you wouldn't add it, and coincidentally we'll be talking about it right here. On top of being the #1 raw damage hunting horn, Rasping Ballad also doubles as one of the strongest status horns in the game. Swapping non-elemental boost for free element gives you a decent amount of paralysis in exchange for that 5% attack boost. Your damage per hit will go down, yes, but you'll gain the ability to pin monsters down for free attack windows. Paired with KOs, this can make a pretty nasty combination for controlling monsters. Personally, I like using this much more than the standard pure raw version because it's pretty rare that we get paralysis horns that are this strong. Even without elementalists, status Rasping Ballad is still a top contender when it comes to Iceborne's heavy hitting horns. Pure raw might be all the rage right now, but if you're ever in the mood for a change, I definitely suggest giving this a shot. If you want to tip the scales even more towards paralysis over damage, you also have Sforzando as an alternative. What we have here is essentially a status version of the Velkhana hunting horn, so if you like that song list, this is also a decent choice. Sforzando is the more comfortable of our two top paralysis horns here because on top of the extra status for more free attacking, you also get a more generous amount of purple sharpness and some defensive song buffs. Rasping Ballad is a powerhouse, but like I've said before, it's all damage and no utility. Your choices here pretty much come down to Ballad if you're hunting solo and just want to hit harder, or Sforzando if you want to jump into a multiplayer group and help out with status and songs. Moving on to our blast options, Basilvaldi Rooks here is the strongest thing we have right now. Unlike in World, most blast horns in Iceborne only have average to below average attack stats, which means that blast is less free damage on top of high raw now, and more compensation for lower damage per hit. The others are okay if you really want to use them, but you'll get the best results out of Basil because of its decent raw, easy access purple sharpness, and a solid amount of blast. There are a few sets that work well for it depending on what you want, so we'll be using alternative stats instead of alternative horns here. The standard Master's Touch DPS set works just fine, but if you don't mind moving Agitator to your mantle slots, there are two other options you can go with here. If you remember my Hunting Horn Healing Factor video back in World, that strategy gets a nice improvement in Iceborne. The new Valhazak set bonus only requires 2 pieces to activate instead of 3, so you can now get both that and Master's Touch on a single set. Pair that with a health augment and the new extended recovery song and you have multiple layers of health regeneration for a nice comfy set to hunt in. If you'd rather just see as many explosions as you can go with the critical status set instead. Basil might have less blast than other blast horns, but it makes up for a few less explosions by hitting harder. That makes it the stronger choice when you consider the fact that monster status tolerance increases as hunts goes on. You want the higher damage on your regular weapon hits to compensate for when the explosions start getting less frequent. Up next we have Sleep. Hunting Horn got a neat new offensive tool in the form of songs meant just for attacking in Iceborne. These stack into a single heavy burst in an encore, which works out perfectly as a waking hit. If you want to use the encore wake up strategy by itself, Von Rattle is your horn. Impact waves take their damage from raw attack, so a sleep horn with attack up is the best thing for the job. A focus on attack will also help you put out more hurt between sleeps. The angle we'll be going with here is a normal raw setup with little investment in status with a free space. Knock them around till they fall asleep, snag that wake up hit, rinse and repeat. You won't be hitting quite as hard as a purple sharpness horn with attack up XL, so you'll have to make the most out of those free double damage hits. If you want to exploit sleep openings more often, you have the Nyx Barone. Because of its naturally high sleep value and its status attack boosting song, you can easily hit over 900 sleep on this thing. That means much more frequent status activations, especially when you factor in critical status. But the lower raw attack and lack of attack up on it means that you'll need to get more creative with your damage output. This one is built more towards strategies like sleep bombing or wall shot wake ups, but if you really want you can still do encore wake ups with dragon waves. The double damage multiplier will make those hits hurt. This horn is more of a fun setup gimmick than something that puts out high damage on its own. You'll usually want to save those for when you can't pull off one of those other options. Strategy is what maxes out the potential of a weapon like this. Lastly, we have Poison. Now, Hunting Horn's situation with Poison is a bit different than it is with other weapons. For anything that has Gold Rathian as a meta option, Poison is strong because it's free extra damage on top of an already strong raw weapon. For Hunting Horn though, none of our current Poison options have attack up, so it's not quite free damage added onto a strong raw weapon when said weapon is 15 to 20% weaker by default than other options. On the other hand though, if you want a non-attack up song list anyway, Poison can be handy for making up a bit, but not all, of what you're missing out on. Earpug's large song lists are a great example, and both of those just so happen to show up on our two main Poison options, Wolf Shamisen and Datura Maestro. Both of these have pretty much the same attack power, but Wolf Shamisen edges out as the slightly stronger horn because it gets Dragon Waves as the burst damage attacking option. It's an interesting weapon because it gets the affinity up song, which stacks on top of its natural affinity to give it a whopping 45% before any skills. Attack boost 4 makes it 50%, and then either weakness exploit or critical eye and an affinity augment lets you hit 100% extremely easily. My setup here is somewhere in the middle, hitting 90% after the affinity song and only needing a single point of weakness exploit to max that out. Even with the critical status on that set, Datura still has more consistent status output thanks to its high natural value of 660 poison. You'll need that damage taken away constantly because this horn has more of a focus on healing and safety than it does on actual offensive boosts. In Master Rank, it's now the only horn with the Heal L song list, which makes it work great with the healing factor set we went over earlier. Normally the song isn't enough on its own to keep you at full, but with the passive regen tacked on, you're packing a ton of recovery. So much in fact that you don't even need a health augment to keep at peak performance. You can add one of course, but giving up 15 true raw worth of augments on a hunting horn that doesn't have attack boost already but does have a lot of built-in healing isn't really something I'd recommend. With that covered, we wrapped up the full selection of the best horns for each status. The elemental horns are up next, and there are some pretty interesting things going on there in Iceborne. Expect to see that video soon. In the meantime, have fun building and trying these hunting horn sets out, and be sure to check out my top 5 raw damage hunting horn video in case you haven't already. Until next time, this has been another KPlays, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.